Hi, how's it going? I'm having a lot of feelings right now, and this is the only reason that I get dressed up nowadays is to do YouTube or to go get a cup of coffee. So I'm just gonna do me. It's like we have another case of Netflix doing one thing right, which I talked about in my last couple of videos ago, maybe, for his house. They did one thing right and they said, I'm gonna stop here because they're about to do something really wrong again, which I guess, given the track record, isn't surprising. It's just disappointing. It's all the time disappointing, and I don't know why, because everything this year has been disappointing. So if you were a child during the mid-2000s, you probably remember a show called WINX, WINX. And it was, to me, it was a ripoff of the graphic novel series Witch. Definitely more of a witch girl than I was a Winx girl, but I still like the Winx. So I've heard rumor lately, hearsay, about Netflix making a new Winx series. Cool stuff, right? Reminiscing on the Winx, at least I, think about like the colorful costumes, the big hair, the kind of like buggy looking eyes, the flying and the powers. Like I remember the whole little theme song, like magic from flowers, digital powers, rhythms and tunes, the sun and the moon. And that's what I think about. But no, Netflix have decided that every teenager wants a Riverdale-esque, Twilight, color grade, horrible TV show. So let's go ahead and just chat about this, shall we? Let's do it. An article from theindependent.co.uk says that Netflix criticized for whitewashing two characters in Winx Club adaptation. They just killed my favorite childhood. First of all, your favorite childhood what? Because I think show should have been at the end of that, but how many childhoods have you had? So essentially what this article is talking about is the disappointing truth. And I just want to say that if, there was literal outrage and hissy fits being thrown about Ariel from Little Mermaid being cast as with a black actress in the upcoming remake, then people are also allowed, and rightfully so, to be upset with the fact that we've lost two people of color in the Winx Club. And I'm just honestly confused by it. So let's start with a little bit of background. So this is a European and UK collaboration, and I actually didn't know that the Winx is an Italian cartoon, so I learned that, didn't know that. Most of its filming was done here in Ireland, in County Wicklow, with Ashford Studios, who are the studio that brought you Vikings. This reboot of the Winx is labeled as a teen drama, and it looks like it'll deal with more dark elements than I think the original show ever intended it to. Brian Young, who wrote The Vampire Diaries, is as well on this Winx Club reboot. And he is backing this as saying that they're trying to essentially bring a more mature tone to the Winx to attract to perhaps the audience that watched it as children will watch it now as adults. I'll tell you right now, I don't need a mature adaptation of Blue's Clues, so it's the same for the Winx. And it's definitely having the opposite effect because there's a lot of judgment going around based on how this looks, the color grade, the costume design, the backgrounds, the setting. I understand it was shot in Ireland, and most of the background of the show looks pretty gray and drab, which I love Ireland, but yeah, it's pretty gray and drab most of the time. But that was obviously done on purpose. Yeah, so it's very much got that Teen Wolf, Twilight, Vampire Diaries, Riverdale sort of feel to it, but it's the WINX. And the thing about the WINX is that everything in their world was colorful and everything was like fanciful. It was a nice little world. It was very colorful, and it was a very large representation of the 2000s, especially in their fashion. I don't know if I would wear that stuff today. I have like a love-hate relationship with 2000s fashion, to be very honest with you, but it wasn't drab and it wasn't boring and it wasn't mundane, and I feel like those are the vibes that we're picking up from the costume and the sets right now. So the look of the reboot is really stripping away a piece of originality that the WINX had, and it's kind of like a signature mark for them. And I'm surprised that it was given the heads up, like the go to do this, because the creator of the original WINX show has been working on this with Netflix. So it's just interesting to me, like, how that could slide. Let's get to the meat. Let's get to the controversy. Because whitewashing any character should just be known as a big no-no. And it should always have been known as a big no-no. But, you know, especially now, it should always be acknowledged that turning a person who is a representation of a person of color and making them a white character is not okay. And the confusing thing in this situation is that we have a Caucasian actress taking the part of Musa, who is Asian. And at least Musa was part of the original WINX Club. Apparently, Flora, who was our Latina representation, you know, the nature, powers of nature and beauty, because Latinas are beauty. And we've taken her and added this new character named Tara, who's not even from the original WINX Club group. So we've eliminated one character, we've eliminated Tekna, and we've whitewashed one character, and we've totally thrown away Latina representation. We've thrown away a character, we've thrown away Flora, and represented her with another character who has the same powers, like earthly stuff going on. And we've essentially, or they've essentially, not me, they've essentially said, that'll be grand, that'll do. Their thought process to me is that, oh, well, if we replace Flora with Tara, Tara's a white character, so then it's okay, but it's not, because this is a reboot of the WINX, and you're using the original characters, but you took one of the original characters and you threw them out, and then you didn't even take one of the original characters and you didn't even put them in the show. And no, each character of the original WINX was inspired by a popular performer at the time. So Aisha was Beyonce, Tekna was Pink, Flora was based off of J-Lo, so she was our Latina representation. Musa, Lucy Liu, Stella, Cameron Diaz, and Bloom, Britney Spears. So there were 3 POC characters in the show, and 2 have been taken away because we cast our Asian representation with a Caucasian actress. And by the way, this is no hatred or any sort of backlash on the actresses. Like, you're an actor, I get it. It's just very obvious that whatever was the thought process with casting, there was no real consideration taken into keeping that representation. Honestly, there's no excuse for lack of diversity anymore. Not that there probably ever was, but there's especially no excuse for lack of diversity in the industry. There are so many people of color who are entertainers, who are aspiring actors and actresses who could have filled these roles. Stripping away representation is offensive, and honestly, adding a different character to the original WINX, like I said, that doesn't excuse it. This, to me, this whole WINX reboot feels very much like a cash grab. For lack of a better term, it just feels like a Netflix cash grab. It gives me the vibe that it was thrown together very haphazardly and has no actual sustenance to it. I'm kind of picking up right now that there's going to be a lot of unnecessary drama and some sex and some other adult themes and whatever else thrown into there to make up for the lack of an actual plot and staying true to the world of WINX. I know it's cynical, but that's my take. And if you want to look at it from an even more cynical standpoint, you have people like moi who are trying to create original content. I'm a writer. I'm in a master's program for writing, and I try and think all the time of original things, or I write down original stories, or I try to develop something that isn't being done right now. And to know that people everywhere are doing this, are writing, are developing, are creating, and to still see these things like this WINX Club reboot, these remakes of absolutely everything, it's really like discouraging. It's almost like, well, guess I should just sell my soul to a, huge oligarchy that just is banking off of making remakes at this point. But it is a little disappointing, and by a little I mean a lot, very disappointing to see that this type of content is what is having money thrown at it, and like new original things aren't, because really no one had to touch the WINX. Like no one had to like remake that. The same with a lot of things that have been remade in the past like 3 to 5 years. They didn't need to be remade. They were wonderful movies, and that could be a whole video on its own, from Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Aladdin. I know these are all Disney movies. They just didn't have to be redone. But even looking at Netflix, The WINX, Sabrina. But do you know what I mean? Nothing really had to be fixed, and that's why it feels like a cash grab. Everything about the photo that I've been seeing, the main photo I've been seeing about the new WINX reboot, is agitating. And it's their clothes. We're missing our two beautiful women of color. The color grading, the location. It just looks like some House of Anubis Harry Potter shit. And I didn't even remember House of Anubis until I was like, hey, that looks like House of Anubis. Yeah, so I mean, I'll give the show a little bit of a watch, a little bit of a chance to see what it does. But, I had to get on here and do it to them because, yeah. Original content doesn't seem to matter anymore, and I think my professors are lying to me. That was my take on the WINX Club. I'll be back to talk about some more movie or Ireland or whatever related things here in a little bit. So thanks for tuning in and coming to my vent.